Good morning, Animators. This is the next step in our baby animation journey. If you happen to be an effects animator and you're doing some stuff based on the things that I've been talking about recently, I would love to do some critiques of your effects, just little squiggles and squigs and stuff. I think it would be really fun to do some critiques of the things that you've been working on, even if you're intermediate or you're just at that level that like you're not a beginner, but you haven't quite yet hit that industry standard place, that intermediate zone, which in my opinion is the hardest place to be because there's so many fewer resources, tons and tons of beginner resources, and then advanced resources. You have like specialists and stuff, but there's kind of like this gray area where you're not sure where to go next. So if you find yourself in that place, I would love to take a look at your effects. So we've done just a line. Merp. You have the line move around, play with that, just a ball moving around. Then in the next video, we talked a little bit about doing your wavy lines. Then we talked a little bit about just arcs in general and what they mean. And I had just I might do a more precise thing about arcs and timing in a bit. But today I'm going to talk about drawing on the surface of a form because it's super important. It is. When you're doing effects, often you have your effects traveling through space in 3 dimensions. And the best way to practice that is to just draw yourself a 3-dimensional object, nice wireframe. You could even find wireframes online and draw along the surface of it while trying to keep your timing and stuff in check. Your shapes can morph slightly, but it has to change in a way that makes sense. So here it's shrinking as it's moving away. That's something that makes a little bit of sense, right? So whoop, there you go. Get that 3-dimensionality. And when you hide your guide, you get this cool animation that seems more complicated than it actually is. It's just on the surface of a sphere, right? So you can even draw paths on your sphere. Think about the 3-dimensionality of it. Let's make a little diamond shape. I've been having fun with those. Have it stay a little bit smaller. And think about how it would sit in perspective. Right? We've got these guidelines, so if our line is like this, our diamond shape would have its points headed towards the poles. Okay, so this is just an exercise on perspective. And organic perspective, I think I'm going to do some more talks on organic perspective and why they're so valuable for effects in particular. So here we're turning, we're going to want our point. Consider that, the side pole there. And I'm going to slow down here. My timing's very even. Let's just slow down for funsies. So organic drawing has so many things that are going to help you along the way. And I really got into it when I first read Joseph Gillen's book, Elemental Magic. I've talked about that on the channel before. I reread it recently. I'm teaching an effects class, and it really has forced me to re-examine the fundamentals of effects and of animation in general. Just really thinking about it, all the perspective and timing in an analytical way. And it's been a while since I've really sat down with them and had a good think. But rereading it, I can see even more about how the importance of organic drawing and just understanding how everything is connected in nature is going to help you feed your effect. Because everything, like we said, is a squiggly line. It's actually, you're thinking about waves, sound waves, ripples in the water is a type of wave. Even fire is a type of wave that's being influenced by the hot air. So we're going to take some time to get into more organic drawing, the kind of the science, the soft science of using nature to your advantage to get even better effects. But this, I think, is a wonderful exercise for everybody. And you can hide your form again. And now we have a couple of things moving along this circle that you cannot see. And it's going to give your effects. You can see over here, I did some longer cycles on a rectangle, and it gives it a really interesting thing when you get them done. So this is 2 cycles on 2 different lengths. I can extend this. You can see that it runs for quite a long time. Right, so this is something that's very valuable for special effects animators in particular. We often have to have slime dripping down people's faces. We have characters lifting their hands out of the water and the water is dripping off the surface of their hand. So if you cannot draw on the surface of a sphere, like a sphere is a super simple shape, and think about how our drips are going to hang off of this thing, then when you try and do this with your character, you're definitely going to be in big trouble, right? And then think if you have a fire, think of Hades and Hercules. He has his hair that is drawn along the surface of his scalp. And this line here was done by the character animators, I'm pretty sure. very, very static, and then his hair comes up along that surface in a very sensible way. So if he's like this, he's got his hairline like that, and then all his fire comes off like this. It doesn't look like fire at all. But substances this. That's another thing we can talk about. How to get your substances looking like the substance that they are. There you go. That feels a little bit more fiery. And he does some cool stuff when he moves his head, where his fire trails along like this. So drawing on the surface of objects like this, super helpful. If your perspective is bad, it's going to show up in your special effects. It's just how it works. Especially when you get into complex effects, I often see animators who we have to do splashes. And so the scene might be set up something along these lines where we have some kind of water feature. Here's the shore, and this is a hill or whatever. We'll even have lily pads like this. And then our splash comes in and looks like that. Even if it's reused, they just won't force the perspective back onto the plane like this. And you can see that's a pretty significant angle. I see that all the time, not getting that perspective in your splash. Or we'll have two different perspectives. So it starts here, but then later the ripple rings as they come out start to lose track of the plane that everything is sitting on. So if we're doing anything on this surface here, we would want all of our lines to come out in a very sensible way in the perspective all the time. This is our perspective here. So all of our circles have to match the perspective. And when we're doing the top of the thing here, get a nice ellipse, clean it up. Down here, we're going to do our ellipse this way. And you don't have to be super clean the first time. I like to use something like a 50% gray to work out, make sure it feels right. If I don't feel like doing all the guides, you can of course do all the guides you need. And then once I have it nice, I will go in and clean it up, make sure it's working in perspective. And then we can think about if this is a little platform that our character is sitting on, this, things like that. So if our water is rushing out of this, we need to make sure that our water is playing properly in the perspective that we're doing. So just having a cube like this, or a sphere, drawing across the surface. Of course, use cylinders, use pyramids, every shape you have, use character's face. This is going to really help you when you start doing elaborate effects. Because if you have fire bursting through your scene like this, you can think about this in a three-dimensional way. A big fire sheet. And all of it is traveling along this grid. So you could give yourself a very clear path of where all these shapes are going. And once you have this, you know the path that it's going along, then drawing something on its surface like this becomes much, much easier. Some of the best animators will they'll give themselves a guide like that, something like this, where they're going back in space. And then they'll do a rough animation over the top of it where they think, okay, here's my effect. It's coming in this way. Maybe it's going to boil up here and create a big thing before traveling back down the road, and then it'll slip off into the night. Whatever it is, pixie dust, sparkles, fog cloud, some sort of magic. So they'll just start as simple as that, and they'll say, this isn't quite working. This end bit needs to be even slower because it's farther away in perspective, and they'll work out their perspective and timing with very, very simple shapes in a 3D space, and then they'll go back and refine it a little more, add a new paper. It's just like character animation. You can do super roughs and then clean it up as you go. So maybe this is some sort of cloud. You can add a little curly Q so that our cloud has a little bit of interest. And think about all those details once our timing is working. So this smoke is just piling up. The little tail is lingering. Wind it down as small as we need to at that point. Right, so then we can hide all this, hide all our guides, and we get something that feels like it's got a little bit of a think. The important thing is to think about perspective at all. Just have a guide, think about it moving in perspective, and you're going to get things that look cooler. You're going to get things going across the surface of the skin in a way that's really realistic. And you can start with just like little stripes and worms and any simple shapes that just feels fun. Just a fun way to exercise your brain, animate a little bit abstractly in perspective, because that's kind of what effects is, a little bit of abstract, a little bit of real life, a little bit of perspective, and it all comes together in a magical, artistic sort of way. So that's it. Have some fun practicing. Like I said, if you have some stuff that you have done, you would like to get a critique on your special effects, I would love to take a look at them, and I think it would be a really fun video for people to watch. And that's what YouTube's all about. So like, share, subscribe, all the things internet people ask you to do, and I will see you in the next video.